everybody. A board workshop of the Board of Trustees of the McAllen Independent School District will be held Monday, August 14th, 2023, beginning at 4 p.m. in the Dr. Ricardo Chapa Boardroom of the Administration Building of the McAllen Independent School District, located at 2000 North 23rd Street, McAllen, Texas. At this meeting, there may be discussion by the board on the items and subjects listed as follows. Item number 1, I will call the meeting to order. I have done so. It is now 4:01 p.m. Item number 2, public comments. If you'll, the district's going to run a video for a moment.
The school board encourages public comments at all board meetings. According to Board Policy BED Local, board meetings and public participation and related district administrative procedures and practices. Persons wanting to make a statement to the board are required to register with the superintendent's secretary 1 hour prior to the start of the scheduled meeting. Audience participation at a board meeting is limited to the early stages of a meeting. At all other times during a board meeting, the audience shall not enter into discussion or debate on matters being considered by the board unless requested. Each participant is limited to 2 minutes per meeting to make comments to the board. At regular board meetings, the board shall permit public comments regardless of whether the topic is an item on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. At all other board meetings, public comments shall be limited to only items on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. The board shall not deliberate or decide regarding any subject that is not included on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. If an issue mentioned is on tonight's agenda, the board will defer discussion of the issue until the appropriate time during the meeting. Should the speaker drift from the stated subject or becomes disruptive or abusive, he or she shall be given 1 warning. If a second warning is required, then the speaker may forfeit the remaining time allotment. The board shall not tolerate disruption of the meeting by members of the audience. The board has adopted complaint policies that are designed to secure at the lowest administrative level a prompt and equitable resolution of complaints and concerns. Please refer to the following policies. Student and or parent complaints should refer to policy FNG. Employees refer to policy DGBA, and citizens can refer to policy GF. Copies of district policies are available on the McAllen ISD website at mcallenisd.org.
Thank you so much. I will now call up the first speaker, Mr. Lupe Chavez. Mr. Lupe Chavez, are you in the audience? Okay, Mr. Lupe Chavez is not in the audience. Therefore, we will go to item number 3, the discussion and possible voter approval tax ratification election. Dr. De Hoyos.
Today, we will be discussing the district's 2023 tax rate options. State law requires that school districts seek voter approval to raise the tax rate above a prescribed amount. The election is referred to as a voter approval tax rate election. Mrs. Adele Felix, Assistant Superintendent for Business Operations, will present more details, and Mr. Josh Haney, Executive Director of Finance Services for Moak, Casey and Associates, and Mr. Robert Traylor, Managing Director of RBC Capital Markets, are available for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Doyles. Let me share. Good afternoon, Board of Trustees. Today we would like to discuss the possibility of a voter approval tax rate election, which we will refer to as VATRE. It's a mouthful. Good news, tax bills are shrinking. During the last legislative session, Senate Bill 2 was introduced with a focus on property tax relief. 3 key takeaways from this bill. 1, an additional tax break of 10.7 cents. This is what we refer to as compression. It is basically a decrease in tax rate. What does that mean for homeowners? When a tax rate is set, for every $100 value of their home, a tax will be assessed. For example, if a rate is set at $1, then for every $100, $1 goes to the taxing entity. If it's reduced by 10.7 cents, then 90 cents will go to the taxing entity. That's really what the first bullet is referring to. The second takeaway is the increase of the homestead exemption. Homeowners are able to claim a homestead exemption from the basis of their taxable value. Homeowners are able to claim a homestead exemption from the appraised district, from the appraisal district for their primary home. If the exemption is approved, the basis of their taxable values is reduced. For example, if your home is valued at $140,000, a current exemption amount of $40,000 will reduce that to $100,000. But now with the $100,000 exemption, you will only be taxed on $40,000. So basically, it reduces your taxable value by $60,000. And the last item is a win for districts, is a win for us, a hold harmless provision for school districts. As you may have heard me say in earlier discussions that if we decrease, if we compress, it's not a dollar for dollar. However, with this Senate bill, they added a hold harmless to keep us equal, to keep us whole. We won't lose that money. And our preliminary calculations have showed us that that is the case. So that's a win for us. This bill will be on the ballot at the November 7th election. All state guidance has advised us that we compute our estimates based on the passing of this bill. This slide includes a proposed tax rate we use to budget the 23-24 school year prior to Senate Bill 2. This was published on June 2nd, 2023. Our tax rate includes the maintenance and operations rate, which we call the M&O rate, which is the rate we use to run daily operations. It's our daily operating expenditures. And the interest and sinking rate, what we refer to as the INS rate, which is our rate to meet our outstanding bonded debt obligations. As we discuss the VATRE options, it will not exceed the published maintenance and operations rate. But note that our total tax rate was budgeted and proposed at 1.0011. And as I mentioned before, that means $1 of every $100 goes to the taxing entity. That's what this slide means. So here's our chance. This election allows the district to maximize the maintenance and operations tax rate by adding 4.14 cents, while still realizing a 17.55 cent tax decrease to our taxpayers. This is a tax savings with the compared to our prior year tax rate. Here are our options, tax rate options. We have option 1 is no VATRE with the implementation of Senate Bill 2. Option 2 is the proposed tax rate to include a VATRE while still decreasing from our prior year tax rate. This can generate approximately $3.4 million of additional tax revenues. But I will also say it positively affects our state funding, which we'll discuss in a slide, in one of the next slides. So what does this mean for the taxpayer? The average home value in McAllen is $213.206. That's according to Zillow and other references. So we'll focus on the $200,000 row, which is highlighted in red. So last year, at a rate of 1.0964, with the $40,000 homestead exemption, a taxpayer would pay $1,754 in taxes. With a VATRE and the homestead exemption increased to $100,000, they will be paying $921, which results in a yearly variance of $833 right here. So it comes out to a monthly savings of $69. But I would also like to mention, if you notice the home value of $100,000, if your home value is less than $100,000, there will be no tax assessed to you. So that's key. What does this mean for the district? Increased funding and the estimated amount of $5.1 million. If you recall, I mentioned that the tax revenue was approximately 3.4. By increasing our local tax effort by our taxpayers, the state funding is also projected to increase by $1.7 for an estimated revenue increase of $5.1 million. And this is compared to our adopted budget for this upcoming fiscal year, well, this current fiscal year. If we elect to go for a VATRE, this is our timeline. The dates in blue have already passed. June 30th, we adopted our 23-24 budget. July 7th, we selected an auditor to perform our efficiency audit as required to order a VATRE, and we are in the process of conducting that audit as we speak. July 25th, we received our certified appraisal values that we use to project these calculations that we're presenting today. August 11th, we published our new tax rate. Our M&O rate is less than our published rate. However, pending discussion of our next item today, we will republish the new INS rate after the August 16th meeting. October 7th, efficiency audit must be completed, and the day after, we must post those results of those efficiency audits online and hold a meeting to discuss the results. And then November 7th is election day. So this is the VATRE option. Are there any questions before I move on to the defeasance?
I just wanted to bring something up. So being that we already have our rate published, that means we cannot go higher, correct? I just want that for clarity purposes.
Correct. So right now, because of our next topic that we'll talk, we could republish it out, but there's no need because we want to provide savings to our district, to our taxpayers.
Great.
So compared to last year, it would be a decrease depending on the results.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. So we move on to outstanding bond defeasance option. Another possible option is in our INS side. So we're strictly talking about our interest in sinking, which is related to our outstanding bonded debt. But defeasance is just another fancy word for repayment of debt. And our district qualifies for one of those, which is escrow to maturity. There's another option, but that's not something our district can follow, which we don't have callable bonds. So these are escrow to maturity. So what does this mean? Is that we can keep the same total tax rate that was published on June 2nd, which will provide a 9.53 cents tax decrease over prior year. Any revenues earned beyond the required annual payments will be placed in an escrow account and earn interest. Currently, our interest rates are at 5%, and they're increasing steadily. All collections can only be used to pay off outstanding bonded debt. A key thing here is, notice that last line. The interest savings for these bonds, if defeased, will save $1.7 million in interest. That's something we wouldn't have to ask our taxpayers to pay for. We'd be holding it on an escrow account. So why? Why do we do this? Our interest and sinking rates are annually computed based on the Hidalgo County Appraisal District value. So every year we reassess what is the required payment and what tax needs to be assessed to make our annual payments. But by placing the excess funds into an escrow account and earning interest, we are able to use that interest earned as well as the base to reduce the amount that is due towards the end of the term. And I'll map it out in the next slide. So I know it's a lot of words, but I wanted to be clear. It reduces the amount of time that the taxes are assessed for the same bonds. So for example, we'll map it out here. We have, these are outstanding debts, column A and B. We have bonds that mature in 2030 for a total of $45.5 million. If we were to call for a defeasance, so every year here, we will be assessing a tax rate depending on the home values to meet this obligation. But if we remain with the same tax rate, we can put that in escrow and it reduces this last year. So if you notice, if we defease the first year, there will be no tax rate assessed. If we call for a second year defeasance, it kind of boils, it goes backwards, it rolls up. So it reduces the length of time a tax rate will be assessed by maintaining the tax rate that we already published. Any questions on this slide? So this would be option 3, which would be a proposed rate with a VATRE and defeasance. So our prior year tax rate was a total of 1.0964. Our published and budgeted tax rate was 1.0011. And our proposed rate with the VATRE and a defeasance call is 1.0011, the same, creating a tax decrease from prior year of 0.0953. So what does this mean for the taxpayer now, comparing the same schedule from, as we saw with the VATRE? If we focus again on the 200,000, well, let me just say 100,000, there's no tax, it'd be the same. 200,000, we'd be saving $753. If you compare that to the VATRE and the defeasance, just in the $200,000, it's $80 more, which equates to $6.63 a month. That is it.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, I think this is awesome.
Good work, Adele.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I like your new,
Any style?
yeah.
It's very interactive.
It's very easy to understand.
I will say it was my first time using Canva.
No, it's wonderful. It's a very,
Be coming at it. It's so good.
This is the most impressive body of work I've seen, and with
Oh.
no, seriously.
I appreciate that, thank
No,
you.
I mean, I say with all sincerity, having, lived this, we had a lot of consternation, a lot of apprehension, coming into this budget cycle back in June. And on my part, my apologies for any undue stress that I may have put on you or the staff. And I know in several conversations, folks were a little surprised because they said, you know this better than anybody. Well, I'm not an expert. I'm informed and I read, but I'm not a subject matter expert. So you are, and clearly that's shown here. And so again, I appreciate this body of work and this presentation and the several conversations we had over the last several days to help me get up to speed. I really appreciate it. I do have a question, Madam President. This is for homeowners. How does this affect the business owner, if at all?
The tax portion for, it's a good question. I'm going to refer to one of our consultants. Josh?
Because as you may know, that's a lot of pushback we've gotten over the years. And while I hadn't shown this, obviously I hadn't seen this, I think this is a positive, but I think kind of see how does it shift over to those business owners, especially.
Well, it's the same, the 9 cent savings will still be affected on their rate. So they will also see that because it's the rate that we assess for any taxable property in the city of McAllen.
So it's just magnified for them,
Correct.
because obviously their property value is going to be more than 213.
Correct.
So it does impact them in a positive
It
way
does.
as well. Okay.
It
Thank
does.
you. Thank you, Madam President.
does anybody else have any comments? It's a very complicated subject to understand, and you made it so easy for us to understand it all and to trust the process. So thank you. I just reiterate what everybody is saying and thinking, and thank you so much. I'm assuming the consensus, but I guess we just need to go around with the consensus of the board so that we can give administration direction. It would be option 3, the proposed rate with the Vader and the defeasance. Is that
That's my feeling, Madam
is
President.
that your feeling?
Yes.
We do.
Same.
We can't poll or vote, so it's just a thought.
Okay. Okay, well, is there any more questions?
I just want to mention that the presentation was very thorough, and by doing the defeasance, we're providing a direct benefit to the taxpayers, correct?
Correct. So by keeping the same rate, we will cut down the assessed years that so they'll see a savings, but it'll cut down the number of years we have to assess in the future, and it cuts down $1.7 million in interest that we would be paying the debt.
Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no further questions, I will call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam President.
Second.
It's been moved by trustee Saldivar and second by trustee Regalado. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Since
Motion
we have
passed.
plenty of time, why don't we go through it one more time?
We are adjourned at 4:20 PM. Thank you so much for your work.
Thank you,
It's really
Josh, and
appreciated.
thank you, Mr. Trailer.
Thank you, Mr. Trailer. Yeah, so we are now adjourned at 4:20 PM.